Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. And what better way to get over our transfer blues than to talk about a 5-1 win over Man City at the weekend? Yes, we're still talking about it, and I will be talking about it for a very, very long time. And I'm here to talk about it with my boy, George VFC. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm really good, actually. I'm happy to talk about the game. So if you want anything else, there's a stream for that we did yesterday.
Yeah, George went quite hard on KSC, so that was quite fun. But we did talk about the transfers and stuff on the stream. So if you're accusing us of ignoring it, we are not. But today we wanted to talk about the game. We just did a rewatch, so if you want to go check that out, it's an hour watching basically sort of a little bit of the first half and then almost pretty much all of the second half, talking with the clips and with the details and being able to pause it and sort of look at it properly. The stuff we can't basically put on YouTube. So if you want to go check that out, you can check that out from the link in the description. I'll also pin a comment. But we want to do a classic little list of 5 reasons why Arsenal beat Man City at the weekend. And I think we've sort of discussed this on other pods. It shouldn't just be put down to City were rubbish and they're not very good. They've just spent 200 million euros and they have the greatest manager of all time. And I think it should be discussed how we dealt with them, how we did this. So if you want to pull up the tactics board when you can, let's dive into it. We've got 5 reasons, a couple of them tactical, and then a few more sort of more philosophical, I guess. Let's just jump straight into it.
Yeah, and so I think one of the biggest things that you're going to see here as far as the press goes is just something really interesting. So we had this idea of almost an X shape, and so I'll try to kind of make it, I don't know if I can make it like almost a box here, but we're getting too technical on the fly. But you see Kai Havertz and Odegaard kind of at the top, at the tip of your box, and Martinelli and Trossard, who were our wingers, right? Like one of the biggest things in the press is that you typically see this kind of 4-4-2. This is what we normally see, I would say, in our press. So we've got our back line here. I haven't put in the names because it's not terribly important right now. But, we could probably put Thomas Partey in here. And essentially, this is how we operate in our 4-4-2 press. And we've got, Martin Odegaard doing these bending runs to shadow cover and whatnot. But we really tweak things. We said, Thomas Partey, you sit down. We're going to go really narrow with our wingers. And we're going to have Declan Rice in this role where he almost has to cover two of Bernardo Silva and the pivot. So if you were really going to pop in some City players in the back line here, so they've got their fullbacks out wide, and then they had kind of Kovacic and they had Bernardo Silva operating in this little line, and they had at least one of their center backs back. But they had Ortega operate really as one of those back lines, and this idea was this 5 group were going to face off against City's 6 in theory. So between their goalkeeper, their center back, the 2 fullbacks, and the pivot. And despite Bernardo Silva dropping in or Kovacic dropping in, this entry pass into the middle was Rice's zone. Rice ate anybody within here, and it was a case of even when the ball was put out wide. We had fullbacks that were pressuring, so there was no entry pass inside. So the fullback would come inside here. And Trossard immediately is coming to block off the ball from going from out and forcing it inside. And what we've done is we had Partey who shifted in, and Declan just ate this ball and really won the battle, fed it off to Kai Havertz. And that's what we see for the first goal, right? And that press basically comes in from us having, again, I'll put everybody back to where they belonged. But this essentially came from this idea of having a kind of box midfield with Declan Rice in the middle as kind of this X. Really, what we ended up doing was whenever Haaland was kind of in this center circle, we had 2 players that would stop kind of the Marmouche who was floating in this little zone area over here. And the idea was if City could break us and send it through, we had Thomas Partey and Saliba who would kind of between the 2 of them here deal with this 3. And it was a 3v2 in that zone. And so we were very zonal up front between Trossard, Martinelli, Declan Rice, Odegaard, and Kai Havertz. And we kind of explained that at the beginning. But in the back, it was very much man-to-man. Miles Lewis-Skelly had his winger. Urian Timber had his winger. So, Savinho was taken care of down here. And over here, quite a bit, Gavardiol would step up and, Timber isolated that. But it was very man-to-man on the wings. In the middle, we split responsibility. And, that was kind of tactically the nerd aspect of how we really took care of City.
Yeah, and again, to highlight, it's not how we normally do things. And I think one of the things that we don't necessarily always appreciate is those little tweaks to the press and the reason they happen. We know we're a very good pressing team. We know we can see ourselves constantly winning the ball back every game. We know how we push teams to sort of their left, our right. We can see that and that consistency, but those little things, where someone stood, what their instruction is, even Trossard, as you were alluding to, bending that run to force a Kanji inside. These little things, that's what gets missed. And that's where coaches earn their bread and butter. So yeah, it's really, really good. So move on to the second reason. One of the ways City get you, we're back on the tactics board now, is I think their wingers do really well to do basically up, back and through. So the ball goes up to the wingers, the ball comes out from maybe the centre-back or the fullback, wherever it might be. That ball comes wide to one of the wingers. And then they either combine inside or they chop it back to the defender, or they nick you and they sort of do the thing. Maybe a good example is the Savinho moment with Calafiori. He baits for the fullback to jump in, he jumps, he knocks it around you, he's away, and then they're in with Haaland, whatever. So the way they get up you and they get us sort of up the pitch is often around the sides. And something we did really, really well is as that ball came wide, we dropped back and we allowed our fullback, so in this case on that side, Miles Lewis-Skelly, to go roaming and to force the winger back, basically back up the touchline, but crucially to not sort of get, I guess exposed. The team would drop back, so Gabriel would drop back, Saliba would drop back, Trossard drops back, Partey drop back, and it would allow a Miles Lewis-Skelly to go roaming and go jumping. It also, especially early in the game, it really set the tone. As that ball went wide, we're clattering into you. The fullback's going, you're not getting through here, mate. And same on the other side with Timber as well. If we put the ball on the other side, the team would drop back, we'd reset, the ball would go wide, and then they come back round. Same with Timber. Timber then goes roaming. He jumps into, maybe put number 3 over there. He jumps into whoever it was Savinho or Marmoush or whoever had pulled wide. And again, the team drops back to allow Timber to go roaming and to sort of set that tone. It's basically meant, because they didn't have the physicality, which we'll come to later, it meant that we could control those zones, we could force them back, we could stop them playing, and it got them into that sort of horseshoe of death that we all know and love. So yeah, it was a really, really well done and really well sort of focused bit of tactics. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the work rate that both Trossard and Martinelli did were just absolutely critical to getting goal side in these scenarios. So, you kind of saw on the tactic board, but just visually speaking, the way that they were able to make up ground like that meant that there was no central access from City's perspective.
Number 3 was, I want to talk about the pivot, didn't we, with Rice and Partey, I suppose, in terms of the work they did and they got through.
Yeah, I think from the whole, we maybe won't go to the tactic board for that, but you kind of saw at the beginning in terms of how high, Declan was in that X, and then what Partey did in terms of being man-to-man with Haaland and covering that Marmoush tail, that dichotomy in which, Declan was almost part of this defensive rondo, stealing second balls up top in this kind of zonal press, and then deep, we had Marmoush and Haaland who were really looking to replicate that Kevin De Bruyne, that Alvarez work, right? Like that's what they were trying to do. But we had this 3 in which, again, Thomas Partey was really brave, stepping up. It's how he gets his goal, really stepping into that zone. And then we've got one of Saliba or Gabriel. Typically, it was Gabriel out of possession being the deepest, and Saliba and Partey being really brave as the 2 to face up. But again, we're outnumbering City. And what I thought was interesting with this pivot is the work they make up. I mean, Declan Rice to do what he did in terms of the rondo and be that high up. And then Thomas Partey, again, the work he did to make sure both Haaland and Marmoush had zero joy. There was nothing in there between, Saliba, Gabriel, and Partey. They were the Bermuda Triangle of death as far as the attack went. And then, Declan Rice was just this defensive AI killing second ball zonal press guy that just absolutely in the rondo destroyed any 1v1 that he was in. So it was the pivot what really shone, and the distances that they were able to do. And I'll just end on this. I don't think athletically many people can do that.
Yeah. There isn't much publicly available running data sort of per game, and I wish there was more, because I'm sure the numbers would support that, because they did so much work. And there was I've referenced this before on the pod, but there's a moment in All or Nothing where Mikel talks about any pass inside. Again, I think it's against Wolves, you get a £5,000 fine. And I think I said this on the instant reaction, but I bet there was a kind of any pass inside Thomas and Declan. If you intercept that, I'll give you, whatever you need, a new Rolex, whatever it is, because every time that ball went wide, they jumped over, they stood, and they didn't allow that pass centrally, and they were fantastic. Yeah. I think that kind of leads us to number 4, really, which is, I guess, more of a longer term thing. And there was a clip of Pep that went around that we discussed in the rewatch, where he talks about sort of teams who are the modern teams, or the way certain teams are playing in the modern way. And he used the reference of Bournemouth, and he used the reference of Newcastle, he used the reference of Brighton. And I think really maybe where he's YouTubers telling Pep where he's gone wrong, but maybe where we feel like he's ideologically going somewhere now. And if you look at the signing of Nico Gonzalez, I think that tells you where he's going, and the influence of Rodri and how much they do drop off when he's out of the team. Every team is well coached now, pretty much, in the Premier League. Every team knows exactly where they should be stood. They got the JDP principles. They understand the modern game. The Pep's philosophy isn't a secret anymore. So what edges you, and what sort of gives you that separation? I think it is physicality. And I think this was really a day, especially when we're just talking about those pivots, where you see the ability to have a freak athlete like a Declan Rice, or a bit of a freak with his kind of telescopic legs, and maybe not in his decision, or people accuse me of having my gender again with Partey, but he does have some unbelievable physical qualities. I think it shows just how much, when you match them up against Bernardo Silva and a Kovacic, who, by the way, are brilliant players, very technical, can carry the ball, can look after the ball, but in the middle of the park, ideologically, where Pep's been going with this team was matched up against where Arteta's been going with this team. And maybe he's gone a little bit too far on the kind of the dual winners, etc. But on a day like this, to beat City, which we've been trying to do for so long, it really kind of paid off. And I think that kind of ideological choice of prioritizing duels and physicality, you saw it against Bernardo and Kovacic. They had nothing for us.
Bernardo Silva and Kovacic cannot do what we just explained on the tactics board.
Yeah.
Partey and Declan Rice can. And it resulted in a 5-1 demolition. Like, all the ideology that Pep values, it's why, to me, this idea of ball carrying to attack space is something very specific. It goes a little bit beyond that. And, we need, it's something, I'll be honest, I don't think Pep has done well. It's resulted in some of the, for me, the downfall. And you can see in the transfer targets, you look at Nico Gonzalez, that is moving toward the Thomas Partey,
big boy,
Declan Rice, esque. Combining that with Rodri. Okay, that is moving in towards Mikel land. And before Pep, I don't think he recognized the meta well. He may have felt like this is where ball carrying was going, and this idea of a double pivot was going, but he didn't profile it well. And I think Mikel has always prioritized that. And so when you're looking at that, this ability to split a pivot so vertically is something only Mikel would do. Look at the pivot; it's always next to each other with Pep. And he doesn't trust, because they don't have the athleticism to do what we just saw. But also, the way that we use our pivot was completely new. It was modern. And it was just a tweak that I felt like really made us separate. Sorry, Josh, I won't tell all your secrets. But it's, it was kind of a case of us really separating ourselves from City in that sense.
George Voots, that's the only man I know who has a house phone. And Josh calls him on it. Do you know what I mean? So, let's move forward to the final point then, number 5, which is, I suppose, what we felt around probably after the Miles goal. They gave up.
Yeah.
They gave up. I think that is a huge moment, genuinely. We sort of broke down a number of moments where we're breaking from the edge of our box, and they're in front of us, and we get in front of them. We're the ones who are 3, 4, 5 up, or whatever it is, and we're the ones first at every ball. We're the ones who want it. We're the ones who are hungry, and that makes sense. I want to come in a second to maybe the don't want to say the T word, but maybe where that's not sustainable. But in this game, it's the first time, I think we've commented on it a few times, where we have felt that City just gave up. And interestingly, there's a moment where James McAtee comes on. You can see the intensity and the aggression that they normally play with, and he's trying to impress Pep. But the Kovacic's of the world, the Bernardo Silvas, the Akanjis, the Stoneses, those kind of guys, the guys in the center of their pitch, they need a proper refresh. And it did feel to me like a proper changing of the guard. And again, because we're not as far ahead in the title race as we want to be, and because of Liverpool where they are, because of what happened in the T-word window and all those things, maybe we won't really remember this day as much as we should, because this was a day we have waited for since 2019, and it came, and let's appreciate it.
You know who will remember it? Every single opposition in the Premier League. That's who remembers this. And yeah. I have a feeling that in time we'll look at this as like a bookmark. I'm very big on that. Like, there's eras, and by the way, I'm going to reiterate this on stream. It's not because it's an Arsenal win and all this stuff. It is because it is the first time that Pep Guardiola has conceded 5 goals and by a 4-goal margin. The only time that he did that in the Premier League was 5-2 against Leicester, and that was in his season in which he got 4th and he was coming in for the very first time. Other than that, this man has not been embarrassed. He's lost, but he's never been embarrassed. Since his time in the league. And so I think opposition are looking at that and saying, okay, not only have I seen you bleed, I've seen you get visibly knocked out, stood over and said, go down, little boy. That was the extent to which we saw today. Mm-hmm. And that level of aura that City had as far as the four-peats and what they did, which is genuinely invincible kind of status to people, like almost godlike, that aura is gone. It is gone with this result. And it could have come from Chelsea, Liverpool, whoever. But whoever did that to Pep would have taken something from him. And for me, everything that I looked on the touchline, that was a broken man in spirit. It wasn't a broken man in terms of you're not doing what I told you to say. It was, I don't know why and where I'm at. I'm just so deflated. I don't know how to fix this, and I'm lost. And that, for me, that indecision, that weakness, is something that I've never seen. And, this whole idea of weakness in sport is something that a lot of dominant teams talk about, right? Like Fergie and those United boys talk a lot about it. That's literally their analysis. But when you look at it, even as far as Invincibles go, in terms of Henry, this whole physical edge I have over you in the tunnel, this idea that I'm going to beat you before the game has started, that was something that City had quite a bit. And I think it will have been lost with this match. People will at least go to say, I can step up into you. And it comes down to, yes, there's a changing of the guard. Yes, there's a changing of the squad. Yes, they've invested £200 million. There's a rebuild happening before our eyes. But in all of those buts, never has Pep done and lost the way he has. Really in his career, I'm struggling to think of another time in his career, and maybe someone in the comments can tell me. I don't remember a similar 5-1 happening at Bayern or Barca. Certainly in the time in his Premier League, it's never happened. So from that perspective, I think opposition are looking at this and saying, I can get at City. I don't know if I'm confident about beating you, but I can certainly get at you. And previously, teams sat off City, didn't go up, and didn't face them because of total object fear.
Stay humble, eh? Stay humble, eh? And it's I think we should sack our manager, the guy who did that. I think he's probably not good enough. If you want to go check out that very exciting 5-1, you can do so from the link in the description in the comments. You can check it all out with clips and stuff. If you like the Cannon podcast, make sure you subscribe. You can also check us out on Spotify and Apple, etc., etc. We've got other stuff coming out during the week. Instant reaction to the Newcastle game and so on will be here. But in the meanwhile, stay humble, eh? Thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.